Hello. Um, this is my reflection on the passage from Matarasso's book, A Restless Art. So when reading the passage, The Ethical Implications of Co-Creation, Matarasso argued that participatory art raised ethical questions within art itself and the different forms of art. Due to this, ethics becomes important because artists work directly with people and communities. And after reading this chapter, I also started thinking about how participatory art involves much more than just making artwork. It also involves responsibility, power, and relationships between people. Due to this, I believe that the main ethical question is who really has control. In participatory projects, the use of control isn't always fully equal between facilitators and participants, as typically the facilitators are often still in control the majority of the time due to maintaining structure of the rehearsals, as well as safeguarding and other factors. Due to this, it's evident that participation doesn't always mean control or shared power. Matarasso also suggested that instead of saying that power is equal between participants, facilitators should be honest about power dynamics in these projects instead of pretending that collaboration is perfectly equal. Personally, I don't think I've ever worked in a large project where one or a few people weren't in control for the majority. However, in smaller groups, such as chamber groups, I think that power can be divided a lot more equally, as usually decisions for your instrument are listened to, as there's only usually one or two of you per instrument, and choices and decisions and control of the repertoire is usually a lot more equal, as there aren't so many of you. Another ethical question and issue that Matarasso discussed was representation. When discussing this and consent, I believe that the main kind of ethical question within this is who has the right to tell someone else's story. When in relation to participatory art, I think that participants may, if they choose to, share their own personal stories, but artists must then treat those stories respectfully and not use those stories for their own personal gain, in order to maintain a very respectful and equally controlled performance and just environment in general. Artists, in my opinion, need to carefully consider whether the participants actually feel that they have ownership over their own stories and contributions to the piece. If not, then I think it raises the question of, is it still respectful, and is that a good use of art? To add to this, when discussing what happens if artistic goals conflict with the participants' well-being, it's important to remember that artists may want a strong final performance as it reflects on them based on how the performance goes. However, because of this, participants may end up feeling uncomfortable or overwhelmed. This poses the question, should artistic vision and artist integrity come before the participants' care and mental well-being? Personally, I believe that a balance is needed, as if the participants came first all of the time, then the power wouldn't be equal and the artist may end up being the one feeling used or unappreciated. One idea I also found interesting was the connections and questions between the tension between artistic quality and ethical responsibility. Personally, in my own experience, I found that the power dynamic between, for example, composers and musicians to be interesting, as sometimes the composer can get extremely frustrated if what they want us as the musicians to do isn't being fully achieved. Due to this, I found that often musicians can get overwhelmed or end up feeling underappreciated, and because of this, they're far less likely to engage in workshops with that composer again. One of the biggest takeaways I've learned is that trust is very important, and listening to all participants is just as important, because everyone wants to feel respected and valued. This also takes time, as relationships can't be built in one day, not to the extent needed. Even in small group projects, I've noticed how important communication and mutual respect actually is. overall, I think Matarasso's chapter made me realise that participatory art isn't just only about creativity, but it's also about responsibility. Because these projects involve real people and relationships, I think that ethics becomes very much central to the success and the integrity of the artwork as a whole. Thank you.